Hello everyone, we're back here on Short and Steam with Rome Schmo. I'm Malia from Schmomance on Instagram, and we are kicking off our official first episode of my new podcast. In my last intro episode, I mentioned that I was going to be talking about romance books content only, but I'm going to go a little bit off track and talk about book trackers, which I guess is still on topic, but just not quite romance specific. I've been in the romance book community since 2012. I just graduated from college in 2011. Didn't have a job, left my comfort zone of my home state that I've been living in for the past 20 years, and moved across country with my now husband. And I was just left with a lot of time on my hands, so the first thing I started to do was picked up reading again for leisure, which was really nice. And that's when I started my reading blog and started reviewing books, and that's just when it started. Around that time, that's when I started on Goodreads, and I think that was the main, or at least the only, book tracking platform at the time. So I was using that from 2012 to maybe a couple years ago is when I officially stopped updating it normally in my touring routine. That's when I started on StoryGraphs, which is, I'm a major fan of it and probably the only platform I will be using for the foreseeable future. If you follow me on any of my social media, you see me talking about it all the time. I just keep praising it and I keep sharing tutorials and everything about it because I know there's a lot of confusion how to use it, but it's my go-to. I love it. It has kind of everything that I'm looking for when it comes to book tracking, especially with platforms that are online or are app-based. It has everything that I need. 2022 was the first year that I actually started using it for every book that I read, but I was still going back into Goodreads and updating there as well because I just wasn't sure if I was ready to let go of Goodreads. As we all know, Goodreads is the go-to platform for a lot of people. It's just been around the longest. It is attached to Amazon, so it's able to check off your reads as you're going through it on your Kindle if you use that. It's convenient. It's a convenient app to have, or a reading tracker to have if you read a lot of Kindle books. Because I review books, one of the biggest things that is asked for is the review link off of Goodreads, and for me, that was one of the biggest reasons why I kept sticking with Goodreads, because I felt like I needed to provide that. Last year, I slowly let go of that and just provided my StoryGraph link and whatever retail review link that I had for each book that I read. Like NetGalley, Edelweiss, other PR firms that I used to work with in the past. And this year is probably the first year where I'm officially jumping ship. Not really going to pay attention to Goodreads at all. I just cleaned it out this past week, and that was one of my biggest projects because I just imported my Goodreads library into my StoryGraph. I won't spend too much time talking about StoryGraph, but one of my favorite things about StoryGraph is that they are constantly updating it with features, and I love that. It's just the fact that they are just not here for the short term, they're here for the long term. Another way that I track reads is through Notion, which is essentially a workspace where it has different databases and pages of pretty much anything that you want. I use it for book tracking, and eventually I will slowly start importing my physical library into there. It's a long process, but it's been an enjoyable one. I've been a little bit obsessed about learning how Notion works. So it's just something that I've been using very regularly about the past year and a half. But 2025 will probably be the year of consistency with actually using it weekly. A good friend of mine, Francesca, over at Under the Covers book blog, she created this template for 2025, which I'll be linking this after the podcast. It's still a work in progress. I'm still not done, but I definitely can't wait to share it with everyone. In my Notion tracker, it pretty much has everything that I could ever think of to put in there. It has my books, it has a database for authors, authors that I've read, authors that I want to read from, narrators. I added a database for that. It keeps track of my finances, my book finances specifically, genres, any of my goals and challenges that I have for the year. The good thing about this is that you can tailor it to fit whatever it is that you need, any kind of data that you want to track. and just how you want to see it visually. There's definitely a lot of trial and error to just figure out how I wanted to set up my tracker. And I would be sending so many questions to Francesca almost daily, and I'm pretty sure she got annoyed with me and sick of me, so apologies, but thank you for helping me out along the way. There's also just my overall library that I have, which has a list of all my books. I can plan my reading. I have a calendar set up that shows me the reading that I've done with the books that I finished so far, and I have a release calendar, which is really good to go back to, especially if I'm trying to stay on top of reading my arcs before they are released, which has not been going well. I'm already 2 books behind, and then we have another 2 books released next week that I need to finish, and tomorrow's Monday, so I don't know how this is going to work out. I started a YouTube channel for my digital journaling journey, and I'm going to be sharing not only my digital journal, but also this template that I have on Notion to give everyone a little sneak peek of how it works and just how I use it and how I modified it a little bit to what I needed. And finally, the last way I track my books is through my digital reading journal. I started this journey probably a few years ago, and it should be been more of a creative outlet for me to track my books and a fun one. It has definitely been a highlight of my year to work on my digital reading journal and sharing it with everyone. My biggest hope for the year is to film my reading journal process and sharing that more. So we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping it sticks because I tried it last year and it didn't quite stick at all. So we'll see how 2025 goes with my reading journal and sharing it and uploading it to YouTube for everyone to see. I tried to do the physical journal, but I never kept up with it. And I couldn't decide on a theme, and I would just mess things up and start over. And then eventually I would just stop doing it for months at a time. So I was just accumulating all these things for journaling, and I wasn't using it. So eventually I just cut that off. I sent all of my stuff to a friend of mine, mailed it to her, invested in an iPad because everything just looked pretty on there and I wanted it. So I've been journaling on my iPad since 2022, and it's been a completely fun journey and just become a complete hobby of mine over the past few years. And yeah, that's the main 3 ways that I track my books. Now let's get started with currently. What am I currently reading? What am I currently listening to? So let's start that off. I started off my reading year pretty okay. I was going through books and reading them, and now we are in a little bit of a slump, or just not reading as normally as I would. I already had a DNF. I DNF'd a audiobook earlier last week, and I haven't picked up my next one, but I need to. I have a ton that I could read. I just not quite in the mood. My mood is not grabbing onto them, and I, of course, should be surprised to no one. I have 3 books that I'm currently reading. So I have one that I have in the library. It's actually an arc that I should have read last year. Of course, I didn't. So I checked it out through my library. It's called In the Shadow of the Throne by Kate Sheridan. It is a graphic novel. It's a young adult graphic novel. And it's been pretty interesting. I like it so far. I just had to read it. I can't read this on my phone because it's a graphic novel. And I tend to read at night, so I haven't really brought out my iPad to really scroll through this one. And yesterday, or today actually, I just started The Wild Wolf's Rejected Mate by Kate C. Wells. This one just came out, I think last month? Yeah, so right after Christmas, this one just released. And this series has not quite gone well for me, but I just reread another one and I actually liked it the second time around, so I actually might reread this whole series and see how it goes. And another book that I started on the 5th was Married with Malice by Cora Brent. I am big on book talk recs, especially for anything that has a lot of angst, betrayal romances. I will save the video into a collection and then go straight to my StoryGraphs, add it. If they're on Kindle Unlimited, I'll check it out right away and read through it. I would say the chances of me actually liking it before DNFing it is all over the place. I've had some that I absolutely loved, but I also have had just as many that I didn't love or I just didn't end up reading it at all. yeah, we'll see how the week goes, how my reading goes. Hopefully it picks up a little bit, but if not, oh well. So yeah, that's the end of this one. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and happy reading.